The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived, and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to his son whom Sarah bore him. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. 25 years. That's how long Abraham and Sarah waited for this moment. A quarter century of hoping, doubting, laughing, and sometimes despairing that God's promise would ever come true. They had tried to help God along with the Hagar and Ishmael situation, which only brought heartache and conflict. But now, at the exact time God had appointed, when all human possibility was exhausted, the miracle happened. The Hebrew word for visited here is significant. It means God gave special attention to Sarah's situation. He personally intervened in the natural order to fulfill his supernatural promise. And Sarah said, "God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me." And she said, "Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age." Remember Sarah's laughter back in Genesis 18. When she overheard the angels telling Abraham she would have a son, she laughed inwardly, thinking, "After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?" That was the laughter of skepticism, of someone who had been disappointed too many times to believe, but now her laughter transformed into the laughter of joy, of wonder, of delighted disbelief. The name Isaac means he laughs, serving as a perpetual reminder of both the human impossibility and the divine fulfillment of this promise. Everyone who heard about Isaac's birth would laugh with Sarah, not in mockery, but in shared joy at God's incredible power. Notice Sarah's words, "God has made laughter for me." She recognized this joy as God's gift, not her own achievement. The child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. In ancient culture, weaning typically occurred around age 3, marking a child's survival through the most vulnerable infant years. Abraham threw a massive feast, celebrating not just Isaac's weaning but the secure establishment of the promised heir. This was a public declaration that the covenant line would continue. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. The Hebrew word used here can mean laughing or playing, but in this context, many scholars believe it carried a mocking, taunting quality. Ishmael, now a teenager, was likely mocking his younger half-brother, perhaps questioning Isaac's status as heir or making fun of the celebration. Sarah saw this as a threat to God's promised lineage. So she said to Abraham, "Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac." Sarah's demand sounds harsh to our modern ears, but she was protecting God's covenant promise. Ishmael represented the fruit of human effort, while Isaac represented the fruit of divine promise. The two could not coexist as equals in the inheritance. This was about preserving the purity of God's redemptive plan. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. Abraham loved Ishmael. This was his firstborn son, the boy he had raised for 13 years before Isaac was born. The thought of sending him away caused Abraham great distress. Even though Ishmael was born from a human scheme, he was still Abraham's flesh and blood. But God said to Abraham, "Be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring." God confirmed Sarah's instinct. Though painful, this separation was necessary for his covenant purposes. But notice God's compassion. He promised to care for Ishmael too and make him into a great nation. God's rejection of Ishmael as covenant heir didn't mean he rejected Ishmael as a person. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, and sent her away with the child. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bowshot, for she said, "Let me not look on the death of the child." And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. The scene is heartbreaking. Hagar, once so proud in her pregnancy, now wanders in the desert with her teenage son, abandoned and facing certain death. She places Ishmael under a bush, the same Hebrew word used for the bush Moses would later encounter, and moves away because she cannot bear to watch him die. Her weeping echoes through the wilderness, the sound of a mother's ultimate despair. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is brought up. Lift up the boy, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. Once again, God hears Hagar and Ishmael in their desperation, just as he heard Hagar years before when she first fled from Sarah. The name Ishmael means God hears, and here we see God living up to that name. He doesn't just hear, he provides exactly what they need: water in the desert, vision to see the provision that was there all along. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He settled in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. God's faithfulness to Ishmael is remarkable. He becomes a skilled archer, survives in the wilderness, marries, and ultimately becomes the father of the Arab nations, just as God promised. Meanwhile, back with Abraham and Isaac, we see God's covenant purposes advancing through the line of promise. So what are the moral lessons we can learn from the birth of Isaac? First, God's promises are worth waiting for, even when the waiting lasts decades and seems impossible from a human perspective. Second, God's timing is perfect. He often waits until all human hope is exhausted so that only He can receive the glory. Third, what begins as skeptical laughter in the face of impossibility can become joyful laughter in the experience of fulfillment. And finally, God's covenant purposes sometimes require painful separations between what is merely good and what is God's best. The birth of Isaac stands as a powerful testament to God's faithfulness and His ability to bring life from dead circumstances. As the New Testament would later explain, Isaac's miraculous birth makes him a prototype of Christ. Both were promised sons, born miraculously, through whom God would bless the world. If this story of divine faithfulness and miraculous birth has encouraged you in your own season of waiting, please like and subscribe to this channel.